All right, welcome back to another math video. Today we're going to be doing function compositions, the classwork. So I thought I would do a couple questions in this video and then maybe split it up into another video so these don't get too long. So I'm going to be looking at the classwork for this week, and I'm going to be doing a couple questions on that. Okay, let's do number one. Oh, wait, before I do number one, I did want to let you know what the functions are. So let's write those down. If f of x is equal to 4x and g of x is equal to x squared, we want to find ... Number one. Okay, so the first one tells us g of f evaluated at the variable x. Okay, so whenever you have that open circle, that is the composition symbol. So let me write that down. This is the composition symbol. So whenever you see this, you know that you're going to do what's called a function composition. So what this is going to look like is, first of all, the function on the left goes first, and then the function on the right goes second. So what this is going to look like is this is going to look like a g evaluated at f of x. And since I have two sets of parentheses, I need to close up two sets of parentheses. So I'm going to have to close this one up, and then I'm going to close this one up. Okay. So we're taking the function g of x, and we're putting f of x inside of it. So what this is basically saying is you are starting off with function f, and that function f up here is taking the domain x to the range y. And then the next function comes in, which is g, and it takes its domain, which is y, the range of the first function, and it maps it to its range, which is going to be the set z. So we actually do f first when we do the composition, and then g comes after that. So what is f of x? F of x is 4x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this f of x with a 4x. And then I'm going to close it up because that's what I have right here. Okay? So now I'm going to evaluate g of x, where I replace every single x with a 4x. So looking at this function g of x, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that x with a 4x, and that's going to help me solve this problem. So I'm going to write x squared, but instead of x, I'm going to put in a 4x and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to square 4x. That means I need to square the 4, and I need to square the x. So what happens when you square a 4? Well, you get 4 times 4, right? Which is 16. And then I need to square the variable x. And that's going to give me x times x, which is x squared, right? And I'm done. That is my composite function. So what I'm doing is I'm starting off with f of x, and I'm actually putting it inside of g of x, right? So we're taking the entire function of f and we're placing it inside of the function g. So I hope that makes some sense, or at least it does to me. I don't know if it does to you, but that's function composition in a nutshell. Okay, let's try number 2. This time it asks us to evaluate g of f of 4. Okay, so for this one, I'm actually using the same function that I found in number 1, right? It tells me g of f. Well, I found g of f right here, right? It's 16x squared. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this x with a 4 this time. So let's see what happens when I do that. I'm going to have my 16. I'm going to replace x with a 4 and pretty much keep everything else the same. So I'm going to get 16 times 4 squared. I'm going to do the exponent first. So 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. So I get 16 times 16. Makes sense so far? Good. So now I have 16 times 16, which is 16 squared, which is 256. And that's going to be my answer for that one. Okay. And the last one I wanted to do in this video is number 3. I want to figure out what g of f evaluated at -1 would be. So I'm taking the function that I found in number 1, which is 16x squared, right? And I want to evaluate it at -1. So I'm going to have my 16x squared, but I'm going to replace the x with a -1. But everything else stays the same. So I'm still going to have the 16 out in front. I'm just replacing the x with a -1. All right. So I have -1 squared. That's going to be -1 times -1, which is a +1, right? And then 16 times +1 is just going to give me 16. And I'm done. So the first one was figuring out what the composite function is. And then number 2 and number 3, those were requiring you to evaluate the function at a certain number. So that's function compositions.